Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Go to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, who's excited for Super Bowl week, baby? Yeah? Me neither. You know what? No, I'm excited. I guess go Eagles, right? I'm more excited about the fantasy aspect of it, but hey, I regress. You know what I am excited about, though? We're ramping up into the offseason here real soon, man. I'm almost excited for the Super Bowl to be done so that we can all firmly focus our gaze on the new season. More specifically, we got the Combine coming up quick. Free agency is going to be here before you know it, and it's going to draw in some big attention to a Los Angeles Chargers team who's really turned the page, right? We're in the Jim Harbaugh era. We made the postseason, and it's going to draw a lot of attention from big-name free agents. Yes, just like the one you're seeing on the screen right now. Tee Higgins, who might be the biggest free agent available to the Chargers or any team this offseason. And it's a big possibility it comes to Los Angeles, man. You read it everywhere, right? I'm sure a lot of teams have the same headline, Tee Higgins to so-and-so, but the Chargers are constantly listed as one of the number one destinations for Tee Higgins for a lot of very good reasons. And it's something that we as a fan base have to pay close attention to because this could be a huge move, a Jim Harbaugh era altering move in terms of what was a weakness in the receiving game to maybe is one of the biggest strengths of the team going forward behind Justin Herbert and all that kind of stuff. We all know how important it is to fix that receiving position, and right now it feels like Tee Higgins to the Chargers is as likely as anything you can think of to make that happen. Will it happen? Should it happen? What are the reasons behind it? Some of the speculation behind why it could happen, as one of the earlier big splashes in free agency. Let's go over it in today's video. Before we do, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Hey, man, it's the last shot, dude. You guys want in on Underdog in the football season? Well, here comes the big game, man. Newcomers take advantage of the free pick, the Travis Kelce half-yard total. But also, everybody take advantage of this thing, man. I love these things. The no-sweat tokens, cash in on a big game entry or get bonus credit back. Remember, use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash as well. It's a great way to support my platform and have some fun along the way with our last NFL opportunity this upcoming week. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this Tee Higgins talk and commentary. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Tee Higgins to the Los Angeles Chargers. I'm sure I'm not the first person you're hearing this from, right? I'm sure, it's been the headline of many Chargers articles in the last couple of weeks. It's going to be the headline of a lot of different videos. Heck, it might not be my only video I make on the topic as we get closer to free agency. Maybe more evidence comes out to suggest and support the idea of Tee Higgins coming to the Chargers. But it's all because of one underlying reality, is it not? The Chargers' wide receiver room is in desperate need of attention. The biggest example you're going to see of how bad the Chargers need at wide receiver is of course going to be the last game they played against the Houston Texans in that AFC wild card. That was I'm not going to say embarrassing because honestly, Ladd McConkey went off that game 200 yards, pair of scores. Like, he's been amazing. Nobody's questioning whether or not Ladd McConkey is going to be a stud on this team going forward. Obviously, I've been one of the biggest Ladd McConkey fans for a while, but he needs help, man. The rest of the offense in terms of receiving totaled around 40, 45 yards outside of McConkey's 200 yards. That's just not going to work going forward. When Justin Herbert, if he's not allowed to scramble as much, which I absolutely think they should add to the playbook a little bit more, it felt like he was very restricted to not a lot of mobility in that game, and I think that would have made a lot of difference in terms of buying time, letting these wide receivers get better separation, but I regress. What helps even more are receivers that can separate, that can make big plays. that are consistent in the reliability in terms of a lot of different abilities. They're route running, contested catches, more so hands, which of course all of us know. There's some certain aspects to the team that make that a little less consistent than you would like. And when you don't have that consistency from the position, it can oftentimes look like a quarterback is just honing in on one target. And for the Chargers, it was Ladd McConkey. And at times, that can carry. It really can. But in a game that really matters versus a team like the Houston Texans and a lot of teams going forward, now that the Chargers, I'm going to say we've moved up a tier, right? We are no longer the struggling, who are we? What's going on in the future? Now we know what we are. We know what we're building towards. We're a playoff caliber team that needs to compete in the postseason. How do we add? Where do we go from here? Well, the biggest thing right now feels like helping Justin Herbert thrive, letting him, a little bit more freedom to make plays, but more so give him the weapons that he deserves to keep the offense moving, because this was one of the biggest frustrations as a Chargers fan in 2024 was how inconsistent the offense was for majority of the season. They did really figure it out towards the tail end of the year. But with what the defense was doing, that's what made it most frustrating, is that the Chargers defense saw one of their best seasons in a long, long time. The number one scoring defense in football, top 10 in very many metrics. You want to capitalize on a season where you've got just that good of a defense. And the best way to do that, obviously, is to capitalize on the opportunities they're giving you in terms of field position and possession and time of possession, all that kind of stuff, and score. You need points to win in this game we love called football. And the Chargers just did not have enough firepower to make that happen. We need to lighten the load on Ladd McConkey. Man, this dude was limping to the finish line, but he's such a tough trooper. We need to give Justin Herbert an environment where he feels comfortable, where he can thrive in the postseason. And it all starts with this one magical move, which is adding a number one wide receiver to this roster. That is a huge impact to what the success could be going forward. Just imagine for a second. Move on to this right here. What a player like Tee Higgins would have done in that game versus Houston. Is that enough to move the needle from loss to win? I think so. Now, of course, you'll take a look at that game and say, we got blown out. It was this and that. No, it didn't become completely out of hand until later on in the game. The biggest reason why I feel like this game got away from us is because we couldn't capitalize on opportunities. We took the football away a few times. We were driving down the field. We couldn't score. Would Tee Higgins have changed the outcome of that game? I have to believe it would, dudes. You have to believe that a talent like Tee Higgins, who has thrived in the postseason, mind you, this is a playoff caliber wide receiver who's done it many times with Joe Burrow, would have been the difference maker between a loss and a win versus the Houston Texans in that football game. And that is the point I'm trying to make going forward with this franchise in the Jim Harbaugh era. We're not just here to make it through the regular season any longer. We're not just here trying to grab those 10, 11 wins, get into the postseason, try and take down the Chiefs, et cetera, et cetera. You need to win in the postseason now. That's where the expectation has been set. And sometimes that can feel a little bit harsh, like, hey, director, give this team some time. They went from a 5-win to an 11-win. It's all happening so fast. Well, you know what? It's just what it is, man. After so many seasons of the Chargers just limping and trying to figure out what they are and what's going on, like now finally things are falling into place. Now finally they have the resources to go get big pieces to build around what was, this vision for Jim Harbaugh. Finally they have, the resources to plug holes and find solutions financially to positions of weakness. Tee Higgins fits the bill, and he is the kind of player that takes you from a playoff hopeful to a playoff thriver. Right now with this offense and the way it's currently constructed, you add Tee Higgins to the equation, watch out for this team in the postseason. Now, a lot of you guys will take a look at the stats and say, hey, director, who is this guy? Wide receiver 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals? No, he's not. We all know this. Wide receiver 1 being Jamar Chase is going to see the stats everyone's wanting to see, right? 13, 14, 1,500 yards and double-digit touchdowns and all that kind of stuff. Who's this Tee Higgins guy? Well, it's, the Bengals wide receiver 2 for a while. And in his opportunity, since his rookie season, he has been an elite talent, an elite caliber wide receiver that has put up elite numbers, especially given the fact that he's not even their number one. Take a look at the last 2 seasons. Now, 12 games apiece. We're going to talk about that later in the video. That is one big concern. But in those seasons, man, in 2023, 650 yards, 5 touchdowns, decent. Last season, though, 12 games, 100 targets, 73 receptions, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns. This man was on pace for, if I do the math and everything, I think I did it earlier. I'm going to try and remember. It's somewhere around 1,300 yards and 14 or 15 touchdowns if he were to have played the entire season. That's not too bad. That's not too bad if you ask me. Those are wide receiver 1 numbers. And yes, the 1,000-yard seasons, in 2021, 2022, those are exciting. But, in looking at the last 2 seasons, he has been very efficient. He's definitely started leaning into some of the aspects of his game that screams X-receiver, wide receiver 1 talent. And it's something that all of us as Chargers fans are begging to see on the roster in some way, shape, or form. Tee Higgins is the best option to do that. Who is Tee Higgins, the player, you might ask? This dude is everything you're asking out of wide. Like, there's an archetype nowadays, right? The Chargers, I would say, outside of the era of, we tried with Mike Williams, but he was definitely more of a wide receiver too. Outside of like Vincent Jackson, even Malcolm Floyd, you have to, at times maybe a 1, most likely a 2. Like, we haven't really had that archetype very often. We leaned into other positions, like Antonio Gates, which is something I definitely hope the Chargers are going to try and do at some point for Justin Herbert. But we haven't really had that. Keenan Allen, a very capable wide receiver 1, more of the separator, the guy that gets open via his route running, uses that, part of his skill set. But in the modern NFL, you want a guy with stature, with size, with strength, with, I don't know, man. You see it everywhere. You see the big body wide receivers taking a lot of attention from the defense. It allows a lot of space for the offense to operate and get creative. Tee Higgins is the role model of what you're looking for. If you're wondering, 25 or 26 years old, 6'4", and obviously he's got some mass to him. This is what you're looking for on the outside. But what makes Tee Higgins special, and this makes a lot of different very stand-out wide receivers special in the history of the NFL, is that not only is he big, but he's decently fast for his size. He's got crazy good routes for his size, too. Smooth as butter, consistent man beater, which is something that the Chargers really need right now. And he's got hands for days. Hands. It's something the Chargers, I'm sure Justin Herbert in the offseason, are going to be really looking for this offseason from the position. Only 2 drops on 104 targets for Tee Higgins this season. Got the length, he's got the strength, and he's leaning into those traits a lot more lately, and it really is translating. This is a prototypical number 1 wide receiver in the NFL Football League. This is what you want. The stats scream it. The highlights and tape and all that kind of stuff scream it. You put this guy at the X on pretty much any football team that's in need of a wide receiver 1, he's going to get the job done. Some people will push back at me and say, hey, director, well, what about the Jamar Chase effect? You got a guy like Jamar Chase on the field playing opposite you. Of course, you're going to see some success. And pardon me, yeah, I do believe that. Chase has opened up a lot more opportunity for lighter matchups for Tee Higgins. That's not necessarily, a bad thing in terms of his game. It shows what he's capable of doing in those matchups. But for the most part, it doesn't wipe away his individual elite talent either. Because that is true. Jamar Chase is going to give him better opportunity, but he still showed elite talent in those opportunities. As a matter of fact, there were 5 games that Jamar Chase was not on the field that Tee Higgins was given this opportunity to prove his wide receiver 1 status throughout his career. And in those games, he did amazing. 511 yards, 3 touchdowns scored, 5 games. Those are wide receiver 1 numbers. And more importantly, the impact in those games, help leading them to success, is what you're looking for in terms of a complete roster, in terms of talent in that position as well for wide receiver. 5 games, 511 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's 100 yards a pop, over half a touchdown a game. That's definitely wide receiver 1 numbers, even without Jamar Chase. And it's not like in the Chargers he wouldn't have help either. We have to remember, we've got some building blocks here. Offensive line is on its way. We have Ladd McConkey as well. And McConkey is a big problem when he's let loose. Matter of fact, I've used this example a lot. Of course, there's a lot of DK Metcalf actual talk going on right now. But the duo of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, that duo has been awesome for Seattle for a long time. And I would see a very similar thing with Tee Higgins and Ladd McConkey on the Chargers. So it's not like he wouldn't have some receiver help, not at the caliber, obviously, of Jamar Chase, but he still would have Ladd McConkey, who cannot be left unchecked. That gives Tee Higgins a lot of opportunity to see, yes, it's going to be tougher matchups. You're going to see some of the best DBs in the league. Doesn't matter. I still think he's going to see a lot of success. And the Chargers are really one of the best fits imaginable for his situation, his skill set, the need, what he would be paid. It all fits like a glove. Now, we're not the only team that's going to be after Tee Higgins. Mark my word, there's going to be a bidding war for this guy. There's many articles, I've read many articles regarding his situation in free agency, where he's projected to go. I watched some videos just trying to gauge, the land. The Chargers are consistently listed as one of the top teams, but maybe the favorites right now would be the New England Patriots, considering they have the most money in free agency, or I should say, in terms of cap this free agency period. They've got an up-and-coming quarterback. They've got a thing that they're trying to build. Maybe they could go after him and maybe put, a much higher bid than any other team is able to make. But is that what he wants? We don't know. The Chargers and Commanders maybe are some of the best positions for Tee Higgins' long-term success, not just financially, but competitively. Because Harbaugh and the Bolts, this is a different story than what you're going to see with, yes, some up-and-coming Mike Vrabel and Drake May would be able to offer in New England. The competitive advantage is a big difference in LA. And, the lifestyle and all that kind of stuff is definitely going to follow, but this is certainly one of the biggest moves you can make if you're looking for your future success, not just in terms of money, but at the position going forward. And many analysts believe the Chargers are the number 1 fit because of the situation. Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, the playoff, recent run, the very big need at wide receiver. He would be a slot-in wide receiver 1 for this team. It all really does fit like a glove. And it's going to be competitive, but it's certainly going to be something that if Tee Higgins is a free agent, you can certainly bet that him and his agent are saying, okay, look, we can go to the Patriots, we can make all this money, or we can still go to the Chargers and still make a lot of money, maybe even competitive money, depending on how they decide to handle that in terms of his contract, but also win some football games. And build this thing with LA with Jim Harbaugh and maybe find an extension later down the road, like an extension and another contract even past this one is way more likely if you go to a contender. The Chargers and maybe the Commanders are probably the 2 best destinations, in my opinion, for him to do that. If the Commanders are indeed for real going forward with Jaden Daniels, which I think they are, that makes the Chargers a number 1 fit. And it's not just me. And it's not even solely me saying this at all. This is a whole lot of opinions coming from all over the web. Everybody on PFF, everybody on a whole lot of people on YouTube and NFL.com and all Sports Illustrated everywhere thinking the Chargers number 1 fit. Does that mean we're going to get him? No. But that's definitely something that's going to be considered by him and his team if he does hit free agency. Another big thing he's going to consider is his quarterback play. Man. If you are Tee Higgins and you have spent your entire career getting a quarterback advantage by the name of Joe Burrow, would it not cross your mind to say, hey, I don't know if I want to downgrade at that position? No shade on Drake May. I think he'll end up being just fine for the Patriots. But do you want to go from Joe Burrow to Drake May? I don't know, man. Now, we don't know what Tee Higgins wants. Maybe he's just out there for the money, and he goes and gets the fattest contract he can, which we've seen very many times in the NFL. But if he wants to compete, he knows he'll need a quarterback to the quality of a Joe Burrow. And of the options right now, in terms of competitive money, you got Drake May, rookie, Jaden Daniels, way better rookie, but still rookie, and Justin Herbert. And of those 3 quarterbacks, who do you think gives you the best odds at maintaining that high quarterback play at getting you involved as a wide receiver one and being successful in your first season in a new team, it's got to be the Chargers. Justin Herbert with a weapon like Tee Higgins would thrive. Tee Higgins would thrive. The Chargers, who are a team that want to run the football, will give Tee Higgins a lot more opportunities via, what would we see a lot this season, the play action, than maybe any other team in the NFL right now. It feels like a really good situation. I should say teams that are pursuing him. It feels like a really good situation for Tee Higgins, not only to maintain high quarterback play, but be involved in a team that's going to use him properly, keep him successful. I don't know. From Joe Burrow to Justin Herbert and a fat contract, that would have my attention if I were his agent. Now, speaking of his agent, he's going to have one thing on his mind this offseason, one thing only. You guys, I say it's going to be that contract. How much money would a Tee Higgins cost his new football team? There's a range, and there's always going to be a range with free agents. Tee Higgins knows he's going to be maybe the hottest commodity in the free agent market this season. Like, this free agent market isn't crazy. I've seen a lot better. This season doesn't have the most flush talent of like elite names that you're going to see, but they do have some big names. And I think at the top of it right now, by many different people's perspectives, is Tee Higgins. And they're going to try and capitalize on that. Now, PFF has him slated for a $112 million 4-year deal, which averages around $28 million a season. That is something I'd be willing to do as a Chargers fan. I think that's something that a lot of teams would be willing to do. But more realistically, I think it would be more. You're probably talking somewhere in the range of like an A.J. Brown or an Amon-Ra St. Brown, between $30 and $32 million annually, which of course does add up. That to me is probably what is going to end up happening, especially that you've got so many teams that are looking for a wide receiver one, that are going to have a lot of cap space to move in on a talent like this. There could be a little bit of a bidding war. It could even exceed $32 million a season. That to me, it gets a little bit too pricey, but it's worth it to a lot of these guys. But keep that in mind. If the Chargers were to pursue Tee Higgins, it would be very, very expensive. And one big thing, and probably the biggest pushback I'm getting on this whole idea, we alluded at it at the top of the video. We're going to hash it out here real quick because it is something that to a lot of people, and even the Chargers, would determine whether or not he's worth that kind of money. The injury risk. This is the biggest pushback you'll hear on the idea. And it's not just injury risk, it's his recent injury history. It's concerning. He missed 5 games last season. And guess what? He also missed 5 games in the season prior to that. Total of 10 games, 2 years. It's something Chargers fans, myself included, carry a massive amount of PTSD about. Would we want to take that kind of risk on a player that hasn't been as available for his football team the last 2 years running? It's a legitimate concern. Would it be enough to stop the Chargers? I don't know. These kinds of injuries, luckily, haven't been too crazy, right? Ranging from hamstrings, broken ribs, concussion, I think, as well. But nothing in terms of like an ACL or anything like that. It's just been enough to keep him off the field. Would that be enough to stop the Chargers from signing him? It might be. It might be. But the Chargers already in the Joe Ortiz, Jim Harbaugh era have proven to not worry too much about that if the talent is worth the risk. And again, of course, a lot of those came from the examples of low-risk, high-reward guys like J.K. Dobbins. But I don't know if it would necessarily stop the team from taking a Tee Higgins when the need is so big. When you got a guy like, Herbert, in terms of the strength and conditioning coaches, one of the best you're going to find in football. The way that they managed injury this season was very impressive. If their confidence in all of that fits, I really don't think the Chargers would steer away from a signing of Tee Higgins if it meant they could solve the biggest need on this team, which right now, let's not be cute about it, right? Wide receiver, interior offensive line, tight end are kind of the 3 big ones for me, but wide receiver is hugely important for them to get right this year. Tee Higgins is the number 1 option to make that happen to the fullest effect. And if he's not available 100% of games, which I'm going to say is more than likely, maybe he misses at least 1 or 2 games, as long as he's available for the postseason, which the Chargers did an amazing job at keeping guys available and bringing them off IR into that postseason game, I think we'll be okay. Because the number 1 objective, you guys remember from the top of the video, is to win playoff games, not just make it to the postseason, but once we're there, we need a T Higgins to take us across the finish line. Now, if it's not T Higgins, then who are we looking at? Well, there's going to be guys like Chris Godwin, who's a great option, but has some injury risk. There's a bit of age on there, too. Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, older guys, but also decent. There's the Darius Slaytons and the Marquise Hollywood Browns of the world. They're going to be cheaper. You know, do you pair them up with Ladd? Maybe. Then there's the DK Metcalf trade, which is quickly climbing the ranks of my biggest, moves that I would actually make. I think it's very close, actually, between Higgins. Maybe not that close, but it's close. Between Higgins and DK Metcalf, because you're kind of equating different resources depending on who you get. And funny enough, DK Metcalf has a much lesser injury history than T Higgins. He's missed 3 games the last 2 seasons combined, and T Higgins has missed 10. Matter of fact, DK has been mostly healthy his entire career. That does have my attention a little bit as well. But either way, outside of that, you're looking at maybe the draft. Emeka Egbuka, maybe. Matthew Golden, maybe. But I don't think anything really hits quite like a T Higgins, maybe DK Metcalf. Is this something that the Chargers should do? The biggest question I'm going to ask you guys, does the injury stop you guys? Does the money stop you guys? Or does this idea of, okay, we're not just a playoff hopeful now, we're a playoff contender. We want to get in there, win some playoff games. Is that enough to push you guys to the opinion that T Higgins, despite all the things that are maybe a little bit scary about a signing like this, is absolutely worth that number one priority of the offseason, getting him onto the roster, giving Justin Herbert that elite weapon, helping this offense find its footing, find its rhythm via the passing game, and start matching the success and energy that we had on defense? I'm of that opinion. I think, yes, if the Chargers have the opportunity to do so, I think they should do it. I think they should grab T Higgins. It's not going to be that easy, though. There's going to be teams bidding for him. Of course, the Cincinnati Bengals themselves obviously do not want him to leave. They could tag him again and try and extend him later. Who knows what the situation's going to be. But as of right now, January 31st, 2025, this is the number one option for the Chargers and many teams in the NFL to grab an elite wide receiver 1 for the 2025 season. That's why it's got my endorsement. 100% would be behind it. And something I think the Chargers, if they have the opportunity and money to do, that they should do. But you guys in the comment section below, let me know what you think. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up, stay frosty, and hit up Underdog for the big game this upcoming weekend, man. Let's do this. Bolt up, baby. Let's get T Higgins in powder blue.